Now, tomorrow's a day game with the Phils, meaning that usually you get a phone call from Dan White or Dan Simon, one of the folks there at Dan White & Associates. They are financial planners specializing in retirement income, usually on Wednesdays after the news at 1:30. Well, you got a Phils game tomorrow, so Dan Simon's on the phone right now. Always like talking with Dan. How are you, sir?
I am well, Rick. How are you today?
Good. So, what's your tip for today?
So today, it's funny. I was just listening to your conversation with the previous caller there, and I wanted to talk about, kind of the idea, the thought conversation regarding, maybe it's time to ditch traditional IRAs. And I was thinking, you've got this unused land, right, and you're still taxed on it. And I was kind of thinking about it in the context of what we do with retirement planning and retirement assets. And it's, what do we do with the retirement funds that are unused at the end of the road? It's the legacy planning.
Yeah.
And, the taxability of those funds is going to be very critical going forward into the future with some of the laws that have been put in place.
Whoa, wait. Now, I know of one wherein if you inherit something like, let's say that some angry bus driver aims for me and doesn't miss. And, and then... So let's just say that something happens to me, my wife, and everything. So it goes to my kid. Now, as I understand, if you inherit money now, or maybe it's next year, you have to clear out that account in 10 years and pay all the taxes on that. But that's correct. But that's the only one I've heard of. Tell me more.
Well, that is the truth. So if you inherit money that's in an IRA or a 401k, what we call tax-qualified retirement accounts, from a non-spouse owner, right? So money moves from, parent to child, right? Very simple. Yeah. If it goes from spouse to spouse, you treat it as if it's your own IRA. But if it goes from kind of generation to the next, parent to child, or, non-spouse beneficiary who's not more than 10 years younger than the account owner, the beneficiary does need to deplete that account within 10 years time frame. So this was really kind of on the back end of what I wanted to talk about, because, when we look at the tax environment that we're in today, historically speaking, it's crazy to use the word, but taxes are relatively low. If we look historically, going back to, I believe it was 1913 when income taxes went into law, the highest we've ever seen it was a 90% federal income tax on the highest income earner. World War II, and then it gradually dropped to 70% in the 70s, and it's worked its way down to 37% now. And while that 37% tax bracket isn't going to impact the majority of people in retirement when they're pulling money out of the retirement savings, an IRA or a 401k, they're more likely going to be falling into the 22, the 12, or the 10 bracket. But who it may significantly impact is your children, right, going forward into the future. If you don't spend all of what you put inside those accounts, when your beneficiaries receive those funds, they got to deplete those assets within 10 years. And if the account owner themselves was taking required minimum distributions, meaning they're older than 73 now, they've got to start taking money out right out of the gates. And, the scary thing is the people who inherit those monies are likely in their highest earning years in their 50s, maybe their 60s when, the parent passes. So the way we kind of view things, and I think it's kind of consensus out there with, the huge federal budget, the looming debt that's out there, it's likely taxes are going up in the future. And it's going to have an impact on, really legacy planning, for people with these retirement accounts that they may not deplete.
All right. That's not good news. So I know the government wants their money.
No. I know.
Right.
So what's the option? The option is number one, you do nothing and just say, hey, the kids will deal with it. They can deal with the IRS, right? But, if we did a little planning and said, what if we looked at taking advantage of Roth conversions, right? Moving the money from the traditional IRA into a Roth IRA, meaning you're paying the taxes now, which essentially allows the investor to lock in at the tax rate they want to be in. They take that future tax risk off the table, of their kids potentially being in a 50, 60, 70% income tax bracket where they're not even, partners with the government at that point. They're paying the government more for the money. The Roth conversion does require paying the taxes up front. Some people see value in it, some don't. I think time horizon is extremely important when considering any type of Roth conversion.
Well, you take that in consideration, Dan, but and I think we can all agree taxes are going up, right?
Absolutely, I agree with you.
Yeah. I can't see it going down, especially inflation is well over $34 trillion right now. That has to be paid back. The government creates money, and when they create money and there's a surplus of money in the marketplace, then that creates inflation. And that's where we are right now. They spend billions and billions of dollars. They have to create this money that we don't have. We right now, our national debt is about 123 to 130% of our gross domestic product. In other words, as a country, we're spending 25, 30% more than we're making. And no one's looking at cutting the expenses at all. So you're going to have to raise taxes in order to get that. Plus, Social Security. No one's talking about this, man. No one is talking. I don't think anyone but me is talking about the fact that we're looking at Social Security and Medicare going insolvent. And neither Biden nor Trump nor anybody else wants to talk about that fact because it means you're going to have to raise the age of retirement. You're going to have to increase the amount of salary or income that people have that for which you have to pay Social Security taxes. That's going to have to happen. I mean, I think if everybody was all in for Social Security taxes, we wouldn't have a problem, except for Congress looking for a way to spend that outside of giving it back to people. So something's going to happen there. We're looking at insolvency with Medicare and Social Security, and we're looking at this $34 trillion debt. Yeah, I don't see, outside of cutting spending, what's going to turn this thing around. And you, Dan, by the way, folks who just tuned in, is Dan Simon, financial planner with Dan White & Associates. You can call him 888-690-8820. He's a bright guy. But you, Dan, you've been studying this for many, many years. Can you see any other option?
Well, I think we will potentially see a rollback in the full retirement age, moving backwards from 67 later on. I think we're going to see an increase in the taxability of it in paychecks, right? The income threshold as to, when you're done paying into Social Security. The way I look at it is I believe that anyone who takes it on as an agenda item is going to be scorned for it. But the reality is that the sooner this is addressed, and whoever does it, they're going to end up being the ones that are remembered as the heroes for saving Social Security. I mean, again, it's pulling the Band-Aid off, which hurts from time to time, but the writing's on the wall. You've got this massive generation, the baby boomer generation, entering retirement, workers leaving the job place, and not as many filling it up. So it is an issue. They say, benefits will reduce in 2034, I believe it is, down to approximately 80% of where benefits are now. But like all things, I mean, the longer they push this off, the harder it's going to be to fix. But I get it. I mean, it's tough to stand on a platform, coming up to an election season saying, hey, this is what I'm going to do to Social Security. And it's either going to go one way or the other. I don't think anybody wants to hitch their wagon to it.
So, no, of course not, because you're talking about taking something away from people. And you're going to, whether it's people making, I don't know what the threshold is right now, 130,000 or something like that, whatever. But if you increase that threshold to say $200,000 or $300,000, all those people are going to be very, very angry with you because you say, oh, I have to pay more Social Security taxes now. Yes, yes, you do. You were frozen out at, 123 or something, and you're going to have to raise that. So you're right. It's not going to make people happy. They're going to want to address it after an election. So there was a great idea, though, regarding what do you do for the kids? If you love your kids and care about them, want them to have something, that's fine. Otherwise, spend all their money and the heck with them. So you can convert to a Roth IRA, pay those taxes now, and then help the kids out later so they don't have to basically empty the bucket, empty the account within, 10 years. What are some of the other things that you've seen happen that might be a bit concerning to folks?
Well, the tax issue with retirement accounts is a big one.
Yeah.
Because again, that's where the bulk of most Americans' retirement savings, or even net worth, excluding the real estate, is tied up inside these pre-tax retirement plans. And it's simple when you think about it while you're working. It's, put it aside, allow it to defer on a tax-deferred basis. And that's really kind of the accounting mantra. Don't pay taxes until they're due. But if we don't know where taxes are going to be in the future, Rick, which no one does,
right.
That's the big concern out there. And then, again, you tie that in with Social Security. The number on Social Security is it's over 168,600 of income at this point.
Thank you. That's okay.
Yeah, so you tie that in with increasing Medicare costs.
Yeah,
and then in general, just the increase in cost of living. I mean, inflation. You hear about it, and then I think it was 2 mornings ago I stopped at McDonald's to grab a coffee and a breakfast sandwich. And I think it was $9.50 or so. I was just shocked. I'm like, really? When did this change all of a sudden? It's just, the cost of simple things, it's just gone through the roof.
I don't know how people are going to handle it. I really don't. It's a struggle for many of us. And, you do outside work, extra jobs, some gigs, things like that. That's the only thing I know of to handle it. And what's interesting about interest rates is this. You have younger people who can't afford to buy a house. Interest rates are so high.
Multiple reasons.
Yeah, multiple reasons, right. So the supply is low, so real estate itself is overinflated. I think the prices are way overinflated, extraordinarily so. Plus, you have 7% interest, give or take, usually give. And even for people who are retired, boomers want to get into independent living that will indeed provide for assisted living when they're older. But if they had a house they bought for, say, $70,000, now it's worth $400,000, and to buy into that, it's going to be $5,000 or $6,000. The numbers just don't work right now. So, on the other hand, though, you have people who are retired, and the money markets are working for them. At Schwab, it's over 5%. WSFS has gotten like 4.25 or something like that. So the money markets are finally actually paying out for people. But that's because interest rates are high and it hurts everybody else.
Yeah, it's interesting, especially when you think about the real estate market. When rates went up the way, you think a 30-year mortgage is almost double what it was 4 years ago.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is, real estate's gone up almost the same, where you think it would have come down the other direction with rates moving up so much higher. But I think again it's a lack of supply with people selling, and I feel for the first time home buyer or the retiree that's looking to downsize and buy something that they thought would have been cheaper, right? You plan ahead.
Not anymore, yeah. Forgive me, Dan. We have to wrap. I got to get to Delaware's Afternoon News with Chris Carl. So. Folks can reach you at 888-690-8820 and listen for Dan White on the Money Sunday morning, 7 o'clock on 1150 AM, 1017 FM, WDEL, and streaming live at WDEL.com. Thanks, Dan. Good to talk to you, buddy. Be well.
Rick, stay cool. Take care. Good catching up with you.